Welcome, welcome to a very special webinar yesterday, today, and tomorrow, Italy and Silicon Valley. We're very excited to host a very esteemed panel today and welcome all the participants throughout Italy. My name is Alfredo Coppola. I will be your moderator today and would welcome each of our special guests to talk about the past, the present, and the future of how Italy and Silicon Valley relations, the history, what has happened today, what is happening today, and what is happening in the future. Before we begin, I have the great pleasure to welcome the Consul General of Italy in San Francisco, Sergio Strozzi. Sergio, please.
Thank you so much, Alfredo, and I wish to welcome all of our attendees to this fantastic webinar about Silicon Valley and the relations between Silicon Valley and Italy. As Alfredo was introducing me, I'm the Italian Consul General in San Francisco. So we, as Consulate General of Italy in San Francisco, coordinate the presence, the institutional presence, economic presence, cultural presence, together with the Italian Cultural Institute and the Italian Trade Agency, each, which I thank very much for organizing today's webinar, in the Silicon Valley and in the Pacific Northwest coast of the United States. It's a huge consular jurisdiction. I would tell you that it's not only about San Francisco, it's also, we cover also Seattle, which is another very important innovation and tech place, and also Salt Lake City, which is an emerging center for innovation and tech companies. The task, let's say, of the Consulate General, just to let you know, is especially right now, after the pandemic pause, let's say, is to change a little bit the perception Americans have of our country and of our economic system. We're trying to turn it from, Americans love Italy when you talk about tourism, for example, culture, art, fashion, design, cars, food. American friends love Italy, but the knowledge of our innovation ecosystem is still a bit low. So our task as Consulate General, together with the whole team of institutions like Ieri and the Italian Cultural Institute, is to change, to shift the attention Americans have paid to Italy as a major cultural hub and artistic hub to an innovation hub. So to let companies, big tech companies from the United States, investors, VCs, know how much Italy can still give when you talk about innovation. That's why we are very proud to do our task in this extent. Fortunately, since the end of the 2021, the Italian government has opened in San Francisco a new Italian innovation and culture hub. It's a new tool. It's a physical building, 2 stories building, open spaces, working spaces, co-working spaces, which is a strategic project the Italian government has performed, has carried out. We opened it last year. So in San Francisco and the West Coast, Italy has 2 main, let's say, locations: the Consulate General offices for institutional purposes and promotion at large, and this new Italian Innovation and Culture Hub, which is aimed at promoting the innovation system of our country, tech companies, tech startups, together combining them with scientific cooperation between Silicon Valley, Bay Area universities like Stanford, UC Berkeley, UCSF, UC Davis, with Italian scientific centers and universities, which is another very important pillar. Third pillar within the innovation hub is the cultural promotion, which is traditionally mixed with the business promotion. So we will have in this new building of Italy in San Francisco programs for startups which are willing to come to Silicon Valley to co-pollination, to pollinate and contaminate with the ecosystem of the Silicon Valley. We have programs with them. We have 2 desks of the Italian Trade Agency, one for innovation, and I'm very glad to welcome Sebastiano Peluso, who is in charge of the innovation desk of ICE, foreign direct investment attraction desk of ICE, and the third one is the Italian Cultural Institute. This is very important because it's new to Italian startups and businessmen can leverage on to be present in the Silicon Valley, open up to collaboration partnerships with American companies of this very interesting area, and start their activity, put some outposts in the Silicon Valley in a light form maybe, because we have co-working spaces, and start from here a new adventure, which is a strategic one, to set a dual company with one side of the bridge in Italy and the other side of the company here in Silicon Valley to attract basically investments. Silicon Valley is very famous for. So without further ado, and taking time to our speakers with whom I welcome and looking forward to hear from. I wish all the best to our attendees. We are here to support you as Italian companies, and please don't hesitate to contact the Consulate General and Innov.it. Just one more thing. We are right now running the procedure to open up the new website of Innov.it, of the Italian Innovation and Culture Hub. And maybe Sebastiano can tell you a little bit more. It will be on site on the website very soon in the coming weeks. So far, you can have a look at the website of the Consulate General. We uploaded some of the events we've been doing the past month in the new Italian Innovation and Culture Hub, just to give you an idea of what we do. Thank you very much, and every success to the webinar. Thank you.
Grazie, Sergio. Thank you for a wonderful welcome. And I must say, I must echo the wonderful Innovation Hub. I've been there several times, some really, really interesting talks. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for startups and corporates from Italy and other partners to visit San Francisco. It's so nice after so many years of engaging with the startup community in Italy. Now we have a place where we can all gather. And I must acknowledge also that's here on the main panel is a wonderful man, Sebastiano Peluso from the Italian Trade Agency. Grazie, Sebastiano, for all your hard work to support the center. So yeah, I would like to begin the session. Just a couple of my own personal notes. You know, I am not 100% Italian. I am Italiano Canadese, but as one of the main startup accelerators in Silicon Valley that focuses exclusively on helping European and Asian startups with access to US market. I've had the pleasure of welcoming more than 350 Italian startups to our programs. And I can say that our most recent success stories have been 2 companies founded by women from Trieste region, thanks to the Area Science Park. So we're very excited for their success. On we go to the program. We'd like to welcome our first panelist, Ms. Silvia Veronese, who's the author of a book, La Valle di Silicio. You'll have to correct me on the pronunciation, yes. Welcome, Silvia.
Thank you, Alfredo, and thank you, Consul General Strozzi, for the great introduction. Yes, my first disclaimer is I am not a writer. This book, La Valle del Silicio, came out of hidden passion of mine, but my training, education, and professional career is in a completely different area. I'm speaking today from near Palo Alto, in the heart of the Silicon Valley, but I grew up in Italy. I grew up in actually a couple of different places in Italy, And honestly, there wasn't a particular interest to come to United States or come to Silicon Valley. And I think this is also the story of a lot of people that are in the book. I was lucky to meet, you know, and represent in the book 40 plus Italian Americans who had made it to the Silicon Valley with wonderful stories, but none of them, when I ask whether or not they really wanted to come to the United States, none of them said, yes, I wanted to leave Italy, I wanted to build a new life. I think there is a very, very strong connection between Italy and the Italians that are here. As all of you can attest, it's an incredibly fertile ground. Silicon Valley is slightly smaller than Lombardia in terms of, you know, geographical size. It's shaped a little bit differently. It's not a valley, you know. That's kind of the fun thing. It's the name was actually given by a journalist, Don Offler, in 1971, where he wrote about this valley that really started at the very beginning with in the semiconductor industry, in the semiconductors, and our, you know, Italians have brought a great contribution to the very early stage of chip design. I mean, I don't think I need to explain much about people like Federico Faggin, who has been essentially the inventor of the designer of the microchip. So Italians in the Silicon Valley have been here for a long time. The Italian immigration in the West Coast is different than the one that we see on the we have been, you know, witnessing in the East Coast, New York, Boston. East Coast immigration happened around the beginning of the 20th century for economic reasons that are very different than the people that are here on the West Coast. Really, if we look at Italian innovators in the Silicon Valley, we probably start with two main tracks. One is on the biomedical field, more specifically in genetics. Some of you may know Luigi Cavalli Sforza was a population genetist. He comes here in the 50s. He's you know, one you know, and you can imagine the cultural understanding of 70 years ago, and he's the first genetist that says that, you know, race has nothing to do with genetics. So we are all one population. And he arrives here at Stanford. He first gets invited for, you know, a summer session, and then it's being offered a position. So the cultural heritage of Italians in biotech is still well and alive today. It does expand not only in the Silicon Valley, but I would say throughout the entire California. We have most recently an example of a unicorn founded by Italian, which is just north of Los Angeles. Unicorns, just to define, are companies that have reached $1 billion evaluation. But the core, perhaps the strongest contingent of Italians arrives here in the Silicon Valley in the 60s and the 70s, and they are really a spin-off of Olivetti and what you know, Olivetti, as the great success of Olivetti in Italy. They arrive here. They enter essentially the very early stage semiconductor industry, and then later on the personal computer. And that's where you have people like Giacomo Marini, Luigi Zappacosta, Federico Faggina. They are at the, they're in the Wild West in a sense. The culture of Silicon Valley is, let's say, it is very different than the one of Italy. However, this place really values creativity and the type of analytical thinking that we Italians have. We have all. We all know we all know, and we all talk about Italian schools, and of course we as Italians tend to criticize a little bit the Italian education, but here it's highly regarded. And that creativity and ability to shift your mind during problem solving is something that it's an essential component of the success of the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is a place, it's a multicultural place. You have people from Europe. You have a great percentage of people coming from Asia, from India. So what's really necessary here to succeed is a flexibility. It's a flexible mind. It's a mind that can address problems from many different point of views. So that's in brief, that's the story of where the Italians start. Today there are several hundreds of startups led by Italians, either Italians in a CEO role or in a CTO role. In my book, I was fortunate enough to talk to people who all express a very strong love for Italy and a very strong interest to give back. This tagline of giving back. It's extremely important for all of us who have who are Italians and travel here, stay here, go back. We have very strong internship programs, exchange programs. The fact that the Innov.it Center is now a physical location where people can drive, stop. It's really a testimony of what we can do as as a country, and what we can all do as Italian to give back to our country. So I will leave it here, and I'll give it back to you, Alfredo. Happy to answer any question later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And it's nice to hear that history past. I've only been myself in Silicon Valley for 14 years. And just, every time I do meet somebody from Italy, it's incredible how they completely soaked in that culture of giving back. So it's nice to hear your stories. So moving more to the present, both Ron Weissman and Bill Reichert are investors from Silicon Valley, and they have their own unique stories of what they have been doing recently in Italy, and then some interesting experiences that they can share for startups and other members of the ecosystem in Italy right now. So Ron, please, happy to have you express your experiences, what you've been enjoying when it comes to Italy and Silicon Valley recently.
Thanks very much, Alfredo. It's a pleasure to be here. And Sylvia, that was a great introduction. In fact, many of your friends are my friends as well. I did some work with Cavalli Sforza in graduate school, and Pierluigi Zappacosta is a colleague in the Band of Angels and a close friend and an active Silicon Valley investor. About me, I'm a vice chair of the organization that really coordinates angel investing activity. I run software for America's oldest angel group, the Band of Angels. And I've recently become an advisor to Intesa San Paulo in their venture fund, Neva. I've had 17 years in VC prior to all of this. And Sylvia mentioned her unusual background. Well, mine is even more unusual because my first career was a professor of Italian Renaissance history, which I've written a couple of books. Moving on to Silicon Valley, 2021 was an historic year. There was $300 billion invested into startups, twice what 2020 had been. Silicon Valley was about a third of that, 105 billion. And the market was very much a seller's market. If you were a founder, you were in a great position. What we've seen in the past 6 years or so as the explosion of valuation, that is, what does it cost to buy shares in a startup? In seed stage between 2015 and last year, it cost twice as much to buy the same quality company. For a growth stage company, Series C, Series D, it was 4 times as expensive. And for a late stage company, companies approaching an exit, it was 7 times as expensive for the same quality company. So we had a bit of a bubble going on here with very, very expensive fundraising. What made all of this work was best practices. So if you are fundraising, please become a US C corporation. If you're looking for seed stage or Series A capital, later stage, it's easier to invest in a company directly in Italy. But if you were a startup, investors expect to be close to you. Start raising capital 6 months before you need it. It's going to take you that long to raise it. Target investors well. Pick your investors based on who is likely to invest in you. Use a rifle, not a shotgun there. Company for investors in your stage, in your sector. Don't ask a biotech investor to look at a gaming company and then look at how much money they typically give in a round. For some, it's several $100,000. For some, it's millions. For some, it's tens of millions. So match the investor with your company. Tell a compelling story that differentiates you from the 50 or 60 or 70 other companies that kind of seem like you in today's highly populated capital market. Understand how startup capital works and how we evaluate deals. We do not think like startup founders do. We have a very different way of viewing what's important to us. And I'll tell you the big secret. The big secret there is we are looking for great returns, deals that generate anywhere from 5x to 20 or 30x the money we invested. And that's how we evaluate deals. It's not how cool or important the technology is by itself. And build leverage if you want to really exercise control. Have a great team. Focus on the business and the business milestones. And the best situation is have multiple people want to invest with competing term sheets. But the market has changed. We've had a pretty terrific 2021 and a very troubling 2022 with war, with increasing meltdown in public markets and so forth. Everything is down. Exit outcomes from IPOs and M&As are down compared to the past several years. VC fundraising is down. Series C and Series A deals are down both in volume and dollar. Valuations have fallen by 50%, and the deal power is shifting from founders to investors. Well, what does all this mean? Best practices in 2022 are, remember, cash is king. We are very worried that you'll run out of money prematurely. So be a good user of capital. When pitching, emphasize pragmatic things, not just the big vision. Emphasize metrics, milestones, your customers and your partners, and borrow credibility from your customers and partners. Getting profitable is more important this year than growing fast. Hire a venture lawyer who will help you with term sheets, and a good venture lawyer from one of the top 20 Valley firms will probably not charge you much because they want your later stage M&A or IPO business, but they will introduce you to investors. The diligence you're going to be subject to will be much deeper than last year. establish a valuation that is fact-based and is not based on the 2021 or 2020 kinds of comparables. Your valuation should be based on where you are today. If you've already raised money, consider extending that round, what's called an extension round. And please leverage your US-Italian network to open doors, and you can use customers and partners to help you do that. One of the great things about the current environment is we're shifting now away from things we did last year like apps to solving really important problems, deep tech. So that's great news for the Italian biotech and health tech sectors. So I said that the focus is shifting to deep technology. Whenever capital markets constrain, we suddenly look at what's really, really important, solving important problems. And so what this means is it's great news for one of Italy's real strengths, which Sylvia already mentioned, biotech and health tech. So this should be a very, very friendly environment for companies in those sectors. So I've mentioned some bad news, but overall, investors are open for business and good startups will be funded. Don't be scared by the current environment because smart investors are active when markets are down. We like getting deals that are more reasonably priced. We like the ability to hire strong teams. And remember that it takes 5 to 10 years to build a winner. So we really don't worry about what's happening today or tomorrow. We worry about what it's going to take to build your company over 5, 7, 8, 9 years. So we're less concerned about whether the market is up this week or down this week. Great companies of the kind you see here, Google and Salesforce and Facebook, were all built at the end of the Great Recession in 2009, 2010, or in previous recessions. So down markets are good for building great companies. My view is it's a great time to be an early stage investor. So I was asked to share the secret formula for getting funded in Silicon Valley. This is my secret formula. Target the right investors. To open doors with them, leverage the Italian, European, US ecosystem. Customers that you may have in Italy, partners you may have there. Leverage the innovation center that Mr. Strozzi just mentioned, and leverage groups like the Silicon Valley Italian Entrepreneur Club, of which I'm a proud member. Solve an important problem, emphasizing Italian innovation strengths with a product that's really, really differentiated. Have the right team, tell a compelling story, offer defensible, flexible deal terms, and show investors the potential for venture scale returns, 5x to 20x or more what we've invested. These are the things investors want to know. These are the things that excite investors. So we don't want to hear a product pitch. We want to hear a business pitch about how you're going to take over your market. So these are the kinds of things that that I would emphasize, and this is the success formula for companies that are raising decent rounds right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ron. It's really important to share this, reality check. I know that many startups from countries all over the world, including in Europe and especially Italy, they get a little bit scared when they see this down market coming. The kind of natural reaction is to just sort of wait it out. And we as entrepreneurs, waiting it out, you will never win this way. So thank you for sharing those insights. It's important to look at this down market and look at it as an opportunity, and remember those inspiring words that some of those big companies, Google, Facebook, Salesforce, all grew in a down market. So thank you very much, Ron. So moving over to the corporate world, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a serial venture capitalist, serial entrepreneur, and most recently involved with Pegasus Tech Venture, managing partner, of course. So please tell us your experiences, how Italian corporates can engage in Silicon Valley these days. You're on mute.
So Thank you, Alfredo, and thank you to the Consul General for organizing this webinar. Delighted and honored to be part of this. Yes, in terms of my own Italian bona fides, I just wanted to share the fact that my great-grandfather came over from Italy in the end of a previous century. You know, growing up, we liked to pretend that he was a visionary, bold, global. It turns out he was actually a draft dodger, but that's okay. that's how I wound up here. But my grandmother who was born here, her birth certificate name was Anna America Giomi. And so those are my Italian bona fides, and I grew up, with this sort of strong Italian thread. My mother liked to point out that her favorite professor, when she was a graduate student in physics at the University of Chicago, her favorite professor was Enrico Fermi. She just thought he was incredibly charming, but that's another just example of the contribution of Italy to the United States. So we think of this as as a collaboration, not as two separate countries. But in any case, in terms of my own background, I did, as Alfredo may have mentioned, start out as an entrepreneur long ago and far away when I was a graduate student here at Stanford. I started a company. I started, four companies, two of which went public before I crossed over to become a venture capitalist, and have been a venture capitalist for many years now, working with Ron and with many other VCs and startups here in Silicon Valley. And then a few years ago, I met this global venture capital firm called Pegasus Tech Ventures, which has its headquarters here in Silicon Valley, but offices around the world, and invests primarily on behalf of corporations to find emerging technologies that are of strategic value to corporations. And so what we do here at Pegasus is what we call venture capital as a service for multinational corporations. And the point that I was asked to address in this conversation is mainly to the corporate partners here on this call. I wish we could see each other. Unfortunately, I can't see. I don't know. Normally, I would have you raise your hand if you're representing a corporation. But my understanding is that some of you are coming to this on the corporate side. And so what I want to talk a little bit about is the value of engaging in the startup ecosystem as a way to accelerate corporate innovation inside your own corporation. So that's what I wanted to touch on. But I wanted to just point out that I found a picture of the world that puts Italy at the center of the world. That was an important aspect. So in any case, just briefly, one of the things that I wanted to mention about the importance of corporations in venture capital, one of the stories that is seldom told, but is critical to the success of Silicon Valley, is that Silicon Valley was actually started primarily because of the support of corporations, not because of venture capital firms. And arguably Stanford had a little bit to do with it, but not that much. But way back in the 50s and 60s, when the initial semiconductor industry was being built here, it wasn't backed by venture capital firms, it was backed by corporations. And so I go around the world and point out to people in innovation ecosystems around the world, if you want to build a strong and robust innovation ecosystem, make sure that the corporations in the region are heavily involved. And so it turns out that corporate venture capital 1.0, way back many years ago, was really the origin of Silicon Valley. So Shockley Semiconductor, which was sort of the basis for semiconductors coming to Northern California, was not backed by venture capital. It was backed by a corporate partner who said, I need this technology in my equipment. Following that, there was a company called Fairchild Semiconductor, which again was not backed by venture capital. It was backed by Fairchild Camera that said, I need this technology for my products. So interestingly, the key to getting a robust innovation ecosystem going is to get the corporations actively involved in innovation. So what happened in Silicon Valley, corporate venture capital 2.0 came along, the venture capital industry was created, and this idea of limited partnerships that pooled funds to invest in startups was developed further here. It actually started in Boston, but was perfected in Silicon Valley. And so what happened was venture capital firms said to corporations, hey, why don't you put your money in our fund, because we're going to spend all of our time focusing on innovation, and so you'll get the benefit of that. And so that was sort of the evolution of corporate involvement in innovation. But what happened was, after a few cycles of this, corporations said, wait a second, these VCs are not dedicated to our interest. And so there was an evolution of corporate venture capital 3.0, which is where corporations said, let's create our own venture funds. And that was sort of the evolution of corporate venture capital. And so what has happened is that has exploded. It has varied with cycles in the industry, but roughly starting in the 90s, you saw a lot of corporations creating their own venture capital firms inside the organization in order to invest in innovation and accelerate their own innovation. And so companies like Intel is probably the most famous here, but companies like Cisco and many, many other corporations said, we're going to create a team within our own organization to invest in startups. So that has become an important way for corporations to plug in to the innovation ecosystem. And then more recently, this idea of corporate venture capital 4.0 was invented. And it was actually invented by an investment bank called Hambrecht & Quist here in San Francisco that said, you know, corporations, you want to do corporate venture capital, but you're not really plugged in. And so we will help you by offering a service to run a corporate venture capital on your behalf. And so that was invented in the late 90s, and now Pegasus Tech Ventures has perfected that. And we've developed what we call venture capital as a service. So right now, Pegasus works with over 30 multinational corporations, each of which has a dedicated fund investing in technologies of strategic interest to them. So it brings together the best of all of this history of corporate venture capital to identify opportunities for corporations to accelerate their innovation by plugging in to the innovation ecosystem. And so advice to corporations that want to tap the innovation ecosystem. You know, number one, you have to embrace the concept of open innovation. And the idea of open innovation is the idea that you're not going to come up with all of the innovative ideas for your future corporation internally. Instead, by plugging into the venture ecosystem, by plugging into entrepreneurs, you're going to find ideas and technologies and businesses that could be extremely valuable to you as a corporation. To do that, then you want to shift from purely internal R&D to external R&D. Use the entrepreneurs of the world as your R&D platform. Then what you want to do is you want to identify your 2030 company possibilities. So it's not about next year, it's not about 2 or 3 years from now, it's about this sort of intermediate term where you can make a dent in terms of transforming your company into your future company. So obviously you need to think about what are the opportunities that you can pursue given your strengths, and what are the threats. There are lots of companies that are terrified because technology is undermining their core business. So understand both the opportunities and threats that you need to address by tapping into the innovation ecosystem. And then of course, you need to plug into Silicon Valley. But broadly, what I mean by that is plug into the global innovation ecosystem and support it both locally in Italy, in Europe, as well as plugging into Silicon Valley, the US, and the rest of the world. So you plug in by participating in accelerators, by participating in funds, by developing your own funds, by connecting with investors, by being part of associations. You have to have a very active program of plugging into the innovation ecosystem. And this goes back to my original point, which says, if you don't plug into the innovation ecosystem, you're not going to develop a robust innovation ecosystem where you are. And then figure out how to engage with emerging technology companies. And so you can't just sit back and invest in companies and wait for something good to happen. You have to find ways to work with these companies in partnerships, business development, joint development, licensing, distribution, or possibly then acquiring companies and expanding your presence. So that's the advice that I have for corporations that want to accelerate their own innovation, want to connect with the innovation ecosystem here in Silicon Valley, and transform their own companies by tapping into the startup world.
That's terrific, Bill. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And I didn't realize you represented 30 corporates around the world. That's very impressive. The other cool thing, there's more than 300 multinational corporations in Silicon Valley that have their innovation hubs. And I believe there's only a handful of Italians. Like I think NL is one of them. I don't know of any other big ones that are in Silicon Valley, but it's certainly, they're all there for the same reason, not just to look for investment opportunities, partnership opportunities, but also to stay current, and even after pandemic, they still maintain their innovation offices. So thank you very much, Bill. So moving as we're going from the past, the present, and now, of course, the exciting future, 10, 20, 30 years from now, I'm delighted to introduce you to Ms. Amy Peck. Amy, I'm your #1 fan. So happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks so much. I had to magically make my background a little more futuristic for this talk. So let me share my screen here. And so, I'm going to take you on a little journey to the future, and sort of a perfect follow-on to what Bill was just talking about in how corporates and even startups should be really looking at innovation, but there's also an internal component about building a culture of innovation. And so, the title here of The Future is a Blank Canvas is how we kind of look at innovation and moving from vision to reality. And there is a lot of, process and, practical elements around that, but we really have to start to bring the vision that, Silicon Valley is known for into Italian companies, corporates, as well as startups. So using Steve Jobs and Apple's Think Different, and it's actually strict technical terms grammatically incorrect. It really should be Think Differently. But true innovation happens with a blank canvas. And that then brings us to the art of the possible. And so, really taking the time to build this functionality within your innovation teams is really crucial. So I'll give you a little bit of the landscape. We're in this nexus now where it's the evolution of reality. Metaverse now is the sort of, word of the moment and the concept of the moment. But it's not really just about the metaverse. It's not just about all of these realities, augmented, mixed, virtual reality. We're not going to be talking about any of that in the future. But technology has always been, and emerging technology in Silicon Valley have always been synonymous. So it is important to really understand the landscape of emerging tech and how very quickly it's evolving. We're also at this nexus of moving from Web 2 to Web 3. And this is my little technology tree. And the interesting thing here is I ran out of branches because there is so much emerging technology coming. And it is in fact a tsunami, but we need not be fearful of it to me, it's elements of how we build innovation and build the future products and services. It's really the convergence of all of these technologies is how we should think about it. And I have seen a lot of companies that are looking at innovation in individual silos. But I would argue that, again, we have to look more at what the future holds and then leverage technology to pave the way. And if we do that, the possibilities are truly infinite. And I believe that our future is not a story of technology. It really is a story of humanity. And we need to get back to that core competency and that way of thinking about the future. And we have an opportunity right now to define entirely new systems. And I will use cryptocurrency as an example. You have large financial institutions trying to wrestle crypto to the ground and make it behave like fiat. And we don't need more fiat currency. We have plenty. What we can do is define entirely new systems of value. And another important component and a way in which Italian companies and Silicon Valley can work together is really thinking about how we can make an impact. It's not just impact investing, it's bringing in all of the impactful, there are buzzwords right now, ESG, D&I initiatives, but these are the things that actually are really important and bring us back to humanity. We need to solve some of these bigger problems. The economics will come. If we solve some of these pressing issues, believe me, the economy will support these initiatives. And then one of the things we work on a program called Prospera Women, but diversity has many shapes and forms. And when I think of true diversity, gender is a big component and race is a big component. And we have to close the gap for both gender and race. That is an absolute must. But there are much broader definitions of diversity that companies that are embracing a broad workforce. And we're here in Sardinia right now, and we've met last night, some young startup founders who are from all over Sardinia and told all these incredible stories, and they're bringing their culture into this environment. And it's incredibly valuable for all of the startups. So that is another way to think about, moving into this innovation mindset. Diversity is a core element of that. And at a base, what we have to start thinking about, not as much as where technology is going, but how will we live tomorrow? And not just how we will live tomorrow, but how we want to live tomorrow. We have forgotten that we have agency in building the future. And as actually everyone has mentioned here, there are very practical elements to getting funding if you're a startup, to having access to innovation if you're a corporate. But internally, you need to start bringing cross-functional teams together to address some of this human component of the future. And it starts actually with a personal vision. Vision I can't overestimate how important it is to have vision and to actually be able to fantasize about what the future holds. Because for every 1,000 ideas that are completely crazy, there is one golden nugget that will really pave the way for your products and services of the future. And we also have to move from this reactive mode to proactive mode. And COVID was a perfect example of being very reactive. But why do we not behave this way in general? Why do we not have these cycles of change? Why do we not reinvent the way we do business or bring remote work into the fold? That should have happened 10 years ago, but we had to have a disaster for that to occur. So that's another element of this innovative mindset. So in the practical terms, it's really working backwards from the future. So do the design thinking, do the elements, bring your cross-functional teams together to envision what tomorrow looks like, then bring the best ideas back to validate. Because this is a time for reinvention. This isn't a time to just do things a little bit, kind of incrementally better than we do now. This is an opportunity to really change the future. And the global Fortune 500 companies, more than half of them are not going to be in the Fortune 500 and potentially not even in existence in the next decade. So that is something to consider. You know, there's a great story about, you know, Netflix versus Blockbuster, you know, and the lights coming at you are either the lights of the oncoming train, or you can deftly step out of the way and those lights can illuminate the path forward. So what haven't we imagined? That is something you should be asking yourself in your innovation cycles as often as possible. And I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes: the best way to predict the future is to create it. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you very much, Amy. You know, I think we've got this wonderful full spectrum perspective of Silicon Valley engaging in Italy. And I can tell you my personal business trips to Italy have been increasing. And this year, in fact, and next year, there are so many trips planned, not just for myself, but many of my colleagues. And so I know that Italy is doing business, and Silicon Valley is absolutely welcoming you all. So before we move to a couple of questions, I know that Sebastiano from the Italian Trade Agency in Los Angeles have some exciting news for everyone. Sebastiano, are you there?
Thanks, Alfredo. And first of all, thank you all speakers for joining this event that we organized. It's been really, really inspiring for us and for all the audience of startups, corporations, accelerators, and Italian stakeholders. So thank you also on behalf of Alessandra Rainaldi, the Trade Commissioner, who was not able to attend today. So it's really important what you all have said, and we are excited of this new innovation hub that we have opened in Silicon Valley, where I am now in San Francisco. And as Italian Trade Agency, we fill this hub, this physical space, with services. We have the innovation desk that I'm the honor to manage. And through the innovation desk, we offer support to Italian startups, SMEs, corporates, and stakeholders through access to the US market. How do we do this? Through events. We have we create the Italian pavilion at the most important trade shows in the US. For example, the CES in Las Vegas, the shows for the consumer electronics. Every year we build a pavilion and we invite startups and SMEs to present their product, their services towards clients, potential investors, or journalists. Another big program that we manage is the Global Startup Program. This year at the 3rd edition, this program, completely funded by the government, allows startup founders to spend 8 weeks abroad in an acceleration program. There are 9 countries where this program can be delivered. In the US, we have program in 4 cities: San Francisco, Chicago, Houston, and New York. So this is another opportunity for Italian startups to come here, spend time, meet people like the speakers that we invited today, and many more, and be inspired in changing or adapting the business model to the US market, to find money, to find clients, to find talent for their organization. And we offer also other services to help the startups in coming year. And through the Innovation Desk, we also organize incoming tour. So not only we help startups to come to the US, but we also lead a delegation of investors, of US investors, and also corporate venture capital to Italy, to the most important events in Italy: the SMAU in Milano, the BIAT that is in the south of Italy, and the Make It Fair in Rome. So we bring startups here. We help also investors to come to the Italian main event to meet startups. And on a broader scale, we also do this in capital attraction through another desk that the Italian Trade Agency has here at Innov.it. So other than the innovation desk, we also have the foreign direct investment desk managed by our colleague Alberto Acito. So it's a desk dedicated to attract investment towards Italy, focused mostly on innovation. So Innov.it is a building, but is also a set of services ready for startups, SMEs, and corporates to access to the Silicon Valley. And so consider this as your new home in the Silicon Valley.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sebastiano. Unfortunately, Bill had to leave. He had another appointment sharply at 10 o'clock Pacific time. Sebastiano, che dici? Abbiamo tempo per one question?
Sure, of course.
Okay, one or two? Okay, if there's anyone in the audience that has a question, you can raise your hand.
You can use the Q&A
You can use
area.
the Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't be shy. I have a question. Okay, Ilaria Pigazzini. So, Sebastiano, I think you have the control. She is asking, how can a startup access the Innov.it? Sergio or Sebastiano?
I think, Sebastian, if you want me to answer, I can reply to Ilaria. Right, as we said before, should I speak in English or in Italian? How would you prefer? I know for our speakers it will be better in English, but for Ilaria, English is fine. All right. So as I said before, and Sebastiano was saying as well, we opened the new innovation hub last year. So I just remind you, we have three entities: the Italian Trade Agency with the 2 desks, the Italian Culture Institute, and the third subject running the programs for startups and for innovation incubator, startup incubator is getting in physically in the new center this September. So what we are doing now, what you can do now is to get in touch with the Italian Trade Agency, ICE, as far as the Global Startup Program is concerned. The program Sebastiano Peluso was talking about, with the selection of companies in Italy, and then they bring them here and do the session in San Francisco or New York or other places in the United States. This is the first product. From September 2022 on, we will have also the private company dealing and running the incubator inside Innov.it. So from September 2022 on, we will have more programs for more startups to join us here in San Francisco. So far, actually, the spaces have been used for events involving startups, but not as co-working spaces, because we did events, activities, we made some pitches, but we didn't use them properly to give access to startups directly, because we didn't have the, let's say, innovation and startup services provider yet. So we're going to have that in September. But any interest you may have, Ilaria, just get in touch with us, Consulate or the Italian Trade Agency, ICE, through Sebastiano Peluso. You might find us on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sergio. I know we're running out of time. There was one more question that I can probably anticipate the answer. How do people stay current on projects or events that are scheduled at the center? And I guess once your website is live, there will be all of this information, correct?
Yeah, it's correct. Unfortunately, we've been working very much on the physical side of the center to get it ready, to have it ready, you know, for events. This spring, we started with some things on renewable energies, game developing. We did one thing about women and innovation, Italian Design Day we did. So we had a lot of programs. The website will be ready, as I said before, I think in a couple of weeks, and you'll find it on the website. Sebastiano can give you more details about the website and the address on the internet. So far, you can just Google our website, Consulate General of Italy in San Francisco, or the Italian Trade Agency website, and get Los Angeles and the 2 desks of San Francisco. We keep, updated. Also, our social media, we promote our events. So keep in touch and have a look at it if you are interested in some of our programs. Thank you.
I must say the LinkedIn page that you manage, the Italian Trade Agency, is fantastic. So that's a really good way to stay current. Whoever's responsible for the ITA pages, you should get a raise. Yeah. In any case,
it's a source of information, the Italian Trade Agency Los Angeles social network, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and soon we will have also the Innov.it one up and running. And so we will share with all of you the information, the recording of this webinar, and also when the website, Innov.it website and social media will be live. In the meantime, you can also write to Innov.it@ice.it, ishe.it. There is also a first communication channel that we open just to gather information and requests from you to be able to answer when everything is set up and running in September.
Perfect.
Grazie,
Thank you
Sebastiano.
very much.
Yeah.
Voi.
Okay, so I think we should respect the time commitment for all of the participants. On behalf of the Italian Trade Agency, the consulate in San Francisco, Sergio, Sebastiano, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you to all the panelists, Sylvia, Amy, Ron, and Bill. Ringrazio a tutti i partecipanti in Italia. Buonasera a tutti, grazie mille.
Grazie a tutti, buonasera.
Grazie.
Grazie a tutti.
Grazie.
Buonasera.
Ciao.